Sometimes you have to acknowledge that you never know the right decision. Like, what you're making is the best decision. Only time tells you if it was right.
I can't remember who always said, there are times where there is no right decision. You could argue either side, but you make a decision, then you make it right. I'm Sherry Weston, and I'm the CEO and president of Sesame Workshop, the nonprofit that produces Sesame Street around the world.
I'm Jason LaRose. I'm the CEO of Bombas, the organization dedicated to donating the most essential clothing items to those who are facing homelessness.
Who goes first?
Rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, right. Let's do that. Sesame Workshop's mission is to help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. Sesame was started in the late 60s. It was the war on poverty. It was basically to see if the new technology of the day, and that was television, could teach, because so much research showed that children were arriving at school without the skills to learn. It was an incredible success. It was started with funding from the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Corporation, always been a nonprofit. But I would say, while we're focused on the early years, we also know to reach children and to, especially to tackle difficult issues like homelessness, which you are so involved in. So while we are predominantly focused on children, we're also very mindful of reaching the adults in their lives.
I love that so much. At Bombas, our mission is to be the apparel and footwear company that donates the most essential clothing items to people experiencing homelessness.
I love that Bombas was founded. Really, the reason you chose socks was because you knew it was the number one thing that homeless people needed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our founders read one article that said it was the most requested item in a homeless shelter. The original goal was to donate 1 million pairs, so they set the company up. Buy one pair, we'll donate one pair to somebody who's experiencing homelessness. But the goal was 1 million, and last week I think we're at 206 million.
Wow.
So, sometimes even modest-sized dreams become, these whole organizations that are dedicated to that mission.
I love that you define your success by giving the most socks to homeless shelters. So, of course, you need to sell socks.
We do.
Right? So the business is so important, because the more business, the more mission.
We run our donation business as a channel. So I have a wholesale business where we do sell product with great partners. And then we have our e-commerce business. We have an international business. We have a donation business. The donation business, obviously, the numbers are in parentheses because we're spending money to do that. We choose our partners very purposefully. So it's great that we've had one.
Yes.
Started in 2018 with the first making of character Sesame socks.
Yes,
so
I love those
that
socks.
was great. And now we'll do our fourth iteration together this fall. We've donated between 1.5 and 2 million units just because of our partnership, which is an incredible way to give back and
Well,
and be
I think it's, again, our partnership, we were licensing our characters to be on your socks. 30% of our revenue comes from licensed product to help fuel our engine and our nonprofit work. But it also was so nice because we were focused on homelessness as an initiative, creating resources. We even created a Muppet. There's a little Muppet named Lily who experiences homelessness, and it's all to help children understand it's not their fault. So I remember when we first launched that at the same time we were doing the Bombas partnership, it's like sort of wonderful synergy.
Once you're one of those companies who knows that you can do good, but you can also make a difference while you're delivering on results and the things that, people expect from us. Then you sort of create this community of people who are all like, we're in it together, and our organizations are in it together, which is so fun.
No, I think it's so important. And, particularly for a nonprofit organization, there are challenges. Sesame Street has had many challenges, and it's a tough time to lead an organization, particularly a nonprofit. But the fact that people so believe in our mission and they're so invested in it is such an asset and makes such a difference. Any work is hard. People think, how hard could it be? You're like, we work with Muppets. Well, it can be hard. But you're going to work hard, but when you know what you're doing is intending to make a difference. When we succeed, we're not just measuring our success for a shareholder. We're delivering on an impact, on a mission-driven organization is a really powerful motivator.
People like to talk about it like it's a charitable thing sometimes, and I look at it like it's such an asset to us. It's an asset to the way that we recruit talent. It's an asset to the way we strike partnerships. It's an asset to the way that we get to talk about, why we make quality product and those types of things. It actually makes us a better place. And I think some organizations shy away from the do good part of it because they feel like it doesn't fit in the P&L and things. But I actually think in our world, it's so it's so at the center of really like who we've become.
Well, I think we both know the answer to this. Do customers actually care about a company's mission, or is it all about the product?
Well, we do survey our customers.
Yeah, we do so much research too.
And more than 70% of our customers know our mission. So that's important. But in fairness, mission is not the first thing they cite. They cite quality and they cite
they like
comfort.
the socks. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
They like the socks. Can you sell somebody a first pair of socks based on the mission? Maybe. But they'll
No, but
only
then it's
wear
got-
them
yeah.
if they're great. And if they're great, then they'll buy a second pair or a third pair. We're not a charitable organization from that standpoint, right? We're trying to make
Right.
great product. And frankly, our founders were focused on taking what people in our world in apparel will call basics and unbasicking them, going back and reinventing what it meant to not have a seam in the toe, to think about where should a sock fit tighter? Where should it fit more loosely? Where do people get blisters? Those kinds of things that people took for granted for 50 years. We made socks exactly the same way that they'd always been made.
But I think it's so similar because for Sesame, there's so much that goes into every piece of content that Sesame does. But we can't just say, well, we're what children should watch, right?
Right.
So over the years, we have to constantly not only innovate in how we're teaching, but making sure that we're engaging. Because if you're not watching, we can't teach. For Sesame, we are a nonprofit. You're not. So as a charitable organization, we're fortunate that we have a diversified revenue, that we can license Bombas socks, and you'll pay us a fee that will help support our mission. But when people see Bombas socks, they may assume Sesame's commercial. Right? If they see Tickle Me Elmo, they see us on Netflix, or, they still love Sesame, but they may not understand that we're a nonprofit and need a support. Your favorite Muppet is?
For me, I'm an Ernie guy.
Ernie.
So that's my
Ernie.
favorite, Bert and Ernie. What about
Socks.
you? What's your favorite?
Well, that's like asking a mother who's your favorite child. I'm not supposed to have a favorite. But I would say I certainly can identify with Grover. I kind of like his quirky sense of humor. All right, your turn.
All right, it's my turn. So everyone knows Sesame Street for educational programming. How does the mission go beyond that? How do you decide which initiatives outside of that to focus on?
It's always been like a whole child curriculum. So our mission is to help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. And I always think that sounds like just a clever tagline, but actually it's the foundation of everything we do. So it's smarter in terms of literacy, numeracy, stronger health, resilience, kinder empathy, and understanding. And, if you think about Sesame was created to help children have the skills they need to arrive at school ready to learn. And then when you really look at what children are dealing with, and you realize there are these barriers or these obstacles, and that's really how we choose issues that we might want to help tackle. So homelessness, parental addiction, parental incarceration, the mental health crisis. As we see issues affecting young children, and there are very few, I think, children's brands that have the kind of trust with parents and ability to tackle sometimes what's perceived as an adult issue from the lens of a child.
Yeah, you have permission.
Yeah. Now, that always won't be seen just on the show because often we're working with partners who are, serving those communities. And so parental addiction, you wouldn't see that on the show when you just turned on Sesame, but by working with organizations serving those families, we create resources, videos, materials, partner with them so they have, what they need to help parents and caregivers help young children deal with those issues. It's really helping children feel less alone, helping parents have the resources and the tools and the language to address issues from the lens of a child. Years ago we started our military families work. It was when we were at the height of deployment, and it was similar to your founder just reading an article. There was an article that said 700,000 men and women in military families had very young children, and they were facing multiple deployments. So we thought, gosh, I wonder if there's something we could do there. We, went to the Pentagon, we set up advisories, we looked at the fact that there were no materials to talk to young children about why daddy or mommy's going away. So it started with deployment, and if you have a 2-year-old, and that 2-year-old thinks Elmo's a rock star, and they sit down and watch a DVD with their dad, at the time it was DVDs, and Elmo's dad is explaining why he has to go away. And, those materials were amazing. The feedback was incredible because there had never been any resources for families, for young children, and we've kept it up ever since. Then it was if a parent came back injured or changed, if a parent didn't come back. And so I think that Sesame has a very unique ability to do that, and that's how we decide what issues. It's what are our partners on the ground telling us that they need.
Yeah, for sure. And I can only imagine in your role, like when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, this really affected me." Those have to be the best days.
You hear those all the
right?
time.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. Or I learned English watching Sesame, or my mother learned English. I cannot tell you how often, all over the world, how people have a Sesame story.
Yeah. And for me, those moments are when people kick their shoes off.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Look, I'm wearing Bombas right now."
Bombas socks, exactly.
Or or my aid organization hands these out. We do this at my church or at my VA.
Yeah.
Like those are the moments that
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, okay, I know exactly." Forget about my emails. Like I know exactly what we're doing.
Yes,
And
yes.
those
great.
are amazing
It's
moments.
great. Tell me about a mentor who's had the biggest impact.
Wow. There are a number of them. That's a good one. I'll take one small cop out a little and just say nobody has been more important in my life than my father.
That's so sweet.
A man who barely graduated high school, who, no one in his family went to college. For him to have me and, show up my first day I was born with a set of encyclopedias because he thought that was his way of giving me knowledge and encourage me on, what turned out to be an academic journey and eventually where I am. Like nobody put more into me than that guy.
Did you have siblings?
I do. So I'm the eldest of four.
You're the oldest.
And still the other three didn't want to pursue the academic thing, but I was the one that was supposed to
Yeah, and he had such...
go do it. But, I had a mentor when I worked for McKinsey & Company who was a senior partner for a long time, a guy named Rob Yanker, who was just still is a mentor to me and a wonderful salt of the earth guy who's from Pittsburgh, but, went to Harvard
another
multiple
Midwesterner.
times.
That's
he's got that good Midwestern in
yeah,
him.
yeah.
And I think he taught me what it meant to be really bright, but also to be really pragmatic. I was around a lot of people at McKinsey who were really the smartest people in their fields, but sometimes the EQ felt a little off. And Rob taught me how important, that side of it was and what it really meant to connect with our clients and things. And I think so many of the things I learned sitting across his desk are the things that I still keep with me in building my teams today.
Do you really think you learn EQ or it's inherent?
I think it's a little of both. I certainly think you have to be born with it. I think a little bit of maybe raised in the Midwest is a little bit more interest in other people and a little less standoffish.
Well, it's so interesting because I was just talking to a woman who works at Stanford and is doing all this work on AI and other things, and she was talking about all the research that if you're comparing someone who has really strong social emotional skills, really strong EQ, with someone who has incredible off-the-chart math skills, the one with the higher social emotional skills will actually have more productivity, higher earnings. Like there's just, it's so important, we know that at Sesame, for children to learn not only the academic basics, but those important life skills and social skills.
Well, as a leader, I suspect that you would take people who bring great attitude and great effort every day, regardless of, what their SAT
absolutely.
score was,
I mean, don't
right?
you think I think about how many times I've interviewed people. One has a, stellar resume and incredible background, academics, and then another who's also great, but maybe not at the same level, but is so enthusiastic and so interested in you and the company and why they want to be there. You always go with the one that's most engaged.
I totally
right?
agree. What's maybe a really overrated piece of leadership advice someone's given you?
There are times where there's advice to go in different directions where it's a bit of mission creep. Mm-hmm. And I feel strongly it's still so important that we stay laser focused on what our real core audience and mission is. I think when we try to do everything, in some ways we can be less effective, and I think of that individually as well as for the organization. So there are times when I think people want us to go in very different directions. And as long as we're still innovating and looking at how we have to reach children differently, how their world has changed, rising to meet the needs, I still think when we stay laser focused on our original mission, we're in much better shape.
What's the thing that you knock out of the park?
Personally?
Yeah. I mean, what's the thing you lean on? Because sometimes
Well,
people tell you, work on your weaknesses, but sometimes
No,
go with the things that you're best
I
at,
am.
right?
I think I am stronger on vision and relationships and getting us to a place where we believe we can do it than necessarily the process. Like I want to surround myself with people who have much greater strengths than me in a lot of areas, right? And I'm painfully self-aware
I mean,
What
you
are
gotta
what
decide.
what is your
You know,
secret weapon?
I
Your
don't know if
great
what I
strength?
like to say is when I am doing one of four things, I think I'm adding my most value. And so those things are talking about strategy, talking about resource allocation, spending time on talent, spending time on culture. When I'm doing those four things, I feel like not only am I happy, but I think I'm giving like the best return to my teams and to my organization, you know. The other stuff, yeah, there's other stuff and you have to do it and it's fine and it might be operational, it might be administrative, it might be whatever. But those four things, when I am like setting direction, making sure people have the resources to do their job, having great people around us and making sure they feel like they can bring their whole selves
you
to work
sound like
and
a pretty good leader.
like those are the things. I mean, you have to ask somebody else, I guess. You know, you don't get to decide yourself if you're doing a good job at it, but those are the places where I feel like when I'm doing it, I'm giving my most, you know, to my organization. So I think about those things, and the rest of the time is a little bit what I won't mind chipping away at so I can spend more on those four things.
I think self-awareness is so important in leadership.
So important.
Because I've worked for people who are less self-aware, and it never works out.
It doesn't.
No. You just want them to know that so-and-so would be better at this than me, right?
Yeah. One of the questions I had for you was about risk taking. Is there a risk that you feel like you've taken at Sesame that you said like, wow, I wasn't sure how it was going to pan out, but it really worked for us?
I think people often think of Sesame as this domestic television show. They don't understand the depth and breadth of our work or the reach. And so the fact that we, you know, created the largest early childhood intervention in the history of humanitarian response in Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. We created all new Arabic programming, and then that content would go into home visits and learning centers in addition to all the digital and mass media. When USAID then decided to double down and fund additional work in Iraq, you know, there are certain people that thought we shouldn't be doing that, but we felt like, well, we've sort of made a commitment. We feel comfortable that what we're doing is the right thing. It's hugely needed, and we have the right partners. You know, there are times when the organization is more risk averse, but as long as it's really mission driven and in a place where I think we can actually make a difference, you know, we've tended to take those risks. It's been very hard in recent years because a lot of the work I referenced, like Iraq, when all of the USAID funding was cut in the last 2 years, then we had to completely shut down that work. That's really hard. Bangladesh, Iraq. Federal funding is less than 5% of Sesame's overall budget, but in countries like that, it's 100%.
Right.
And again, those are people working there that you know, have so much admiration for, are doing amazing work.
We feel that so much with our giving partners.
Yeah.
You know, they show up and say, you know, every dollar, of course, in a nonprofit, they're raising every single year. If we don't provide essential clothing items, they have to go purchase them somewhere. So we're helping them divert budgets to other things, but we're feeling that crunch with them for sure, what they need from us and the support they need. We try to donate as many hours as we can out of our office so that they're not paying staff to do certain things, but we're feeling a lot of that with some of
Well,
those
I should know this, but when you have diversified beyond socks, does that mean buy one is given away too for every
does.
item?
Yeah, so the number one requested item in a homeless shelter is a clean pair of socks, but number two is a clean pair of underwear, and the third thing is a clean T-shirt. So we got into those lines of business.
All to extend that.
Yes, so that we
That's
can
great.
continue to donate those
Yeah.
one for one. I think we started the year with about 1,500 giving partners on the wait list. One of the great things about growing the company is we get to take 800 of them off the wait list this year, so we'll get closer to 5,000 giving partners this year as a result, because the need, we're certainly not fulfilling it all at this point. You know, the need for that product is still there, and socks still absolutely dominates the requests.
Well, this is a good one. How do you balance being a steward of a brand with making pragmatic decisions for the business?
We have a plaque in our office that I really love that says, "Make sure your grandkids wear Bombas." And I love that. I'm not anxious to have grandchildren, but I'm anxious to live up to that.
Sesame, it's all about, can we ensure that Sesame's here for the next generation, right?
Yeah. And so we talk about that, and I think that always helps me back up and say, you know what, do the right thing for the next 40 years. And sometimes in the near term, that feels a little bit messy. What's lucky for me, honestly, is that I have amazing founders who totally understand that that's the approach. We have an amazing investor base who doesn't question those decisions when we're making things that are better for the long run. And I think just the culture of our place, people take very seriously our mission. And so luckily my teammates, I think they understand when we make these calls that we're doing what's best in the long
How
term.
many employees?
We have almost 200.
Oh,
So
really? That's really relatively small.
it is relatively small.
Yeah.
We don't own our own manufacturing. We don't own our warehouse, but what we have are the rest of the functions, from designing product into product development, all of our marketing, running our e-commerce and our wholesale businesses and things. So we're a scrappy bunch, but it's a really nice size for building and maintaining culture. We had 190 people in the office last week. We all volunteered together at different places around the city last week as a normal part. We're able to sit and talk about strategic plan with everyone. That gets hard to do with 9,000 employees. It's a little easier with a couple hundred to really, really feel good. And I like going to work where I know everyone's name every day. That's a nice side benefit.
Okay, I have another question for you.
Alrighty.
How did being a newcomer to Bombas help you as you became CEO, and how did it hurt?
I think it helps me with the perspective of how big our mission can be. The founders sort of look at me and say, wow, we were doing $300 million in revenue and donating 20 million pair of socks a year. Can you believe it? And my response is, I cannot believe it's only that big. And it's a nice time, to look at it that way, because I've been in companies with less of a great brand than what this has that are doing $1 billion or $2 or $5 billion in revenue. And so I look and think, my gosh, a brand that 44% of Americans know when you talk about premium socks, but we still have market share of a couple percent, says to me there's so much room for us to take our mission to a place that is 100 million essential clothing items in a year. I think that perspective, because I wasn't there when it was really little.
Right. So you're bringing in an outside perspective.
So I think that really helps. I think the hard part, no matter what, especially in a founder-led place, is the company is built on the culture that they wanted to create. And that's important. I don't want to mess that up. But there's no way you can know all the nuances of a culture on day one. It's hard those first couple hundred days where you're always listening, always paying attention. You always have to, try to take in.
You don't know
all those,
what you don't know.
Yeah, but I know it's great, and it's one thing to step into an organization that needs to be turned around. This is an amazing organization. I'm lucky they're handing me the baton to run the next leg of the race. So I don't want to mess any of that up, and that's the part that I just don't have all the context, or I didn't have the context, so I've just had to go. But the founders have done a great job investing in me. My team has done a great job investing in me and just helping me be smart enough to continue on the journey. Because you definitely are going to make some decisions early on that are going to feel a little anti-organization, and those are tough moments. And I just have those are hard.
But you said in there listening, like those first couple hundred days, and so it sounds to me like you did a listening tour, like you're really trying to listen to others and learn, because I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Because if you've built the trust and they know in your heart you care about this mission, I think it's much easier for them to embrace and not reject the organ, right?
Yeah, and I mean, luckily for me, there are a lot of natural moments for that to happen as well, right? We do a lot of volunteering with our partners, and so those are moments for me outside of the office with a hairnet to be with 20 people and spending time not really talking about work, and that starts to create some trust and connection. With only 190 employees, I can know everyone, and I can literally spend time with everyone over coffee or something, and the size has helped me integrate faster. Your ears better work better than your lips, I think, is what my mother used to say.
Yeah, but what I hear, which I think is so important in a leader, is that you're passionate about it. You enjoy it.
Oh, I do.
You love it. That's so great.
Yeah,
right?
It's
I
so
feel the
nice.
same.
It's so nice to be at this point in our careers, and I see it on your face, and I know I feel it in my heart, that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and I wouldn't trade it for a different spot.
Well, I think that gratitude is so important too, because I've only been CEO for a few years, even though I've been at Sesame for many years. And when I stepped in, it was a very challenging time, and I knew that it was going to be. I don't think we knew certain challenges in terms of distribution, but it was a perfect storm when you then got the USAID cuts and other. You had to do downsizing, and I knew all that when I accepted. But I do feel like in the last few years, I've come to a point where rather than feeling sort of just responsible and I had no choice, I had to step up. No, now I feel much more like, okay, yes, but it's a privilege to lead
Yeah.
Sesame, and I look at it more, even when it's challenging, is that I'm grateful to be able to do this, as opposed to just feeling put upon. I love getting to know you. It's been really nice.
This is such a pleasure.
Yeah. No, it
we
really
could have
is.
kept it on longer. We could have taken a cue from some of the other hosts who had wine and things
Well,
out
exactly,
here.
but all the other hosts knew each other for a long time.
That's okay.
I
I think
was
we're
trying
just
to think
starting.
we could make up something like we dated at Michigan or something.
We
no.
could make up a little story about that. Yeah, I road tripped to UVA.
Yeah,
and
although
we
I
met
think
there.
it wouldn't. The years might not work out so well.
We won't tell anyone
Yeah,
that. We're
okay.
both 25.
Yeah. Okay.